Heyo! My name is Sarah, and today's book review is on The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman, first book in his Dark Materials series. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I admit I went into this book with high expectations. There were people who read this book series and were saying such great things about it, so I went in with that mindset, came out saying it was an okay book. Our main character, her name is Lyra, and she lives in a world similar to ours. There's just one big difference. People have what are called demons, kind of like animal manifestations of their souls. Then we also have other, small little things such as witches or armored bears, a little bit of spirits around in the north and stuff, that kind of stuff. So in this book, a bunch of kids have been going missing, and one of Lyra's best friends, he gets kidnapped by these evil little boogeymen who work for a shady organization, and she begins this long journey up to the north in order to rescue not only him, but also the other kids that have been taken, while also, I would say, probably finding some things that this shady organization has been trying to keep in the shadows for quite some time. Now, when I say it was okay, I enjoyed it. It was a good read. There were times where it frustrated me, where I raged over a few things, and also the fact that we were giving a very important life-altering / world-altering event to an 11-year-old with this great task, and I was like, are we sure that's the right idea? Either way, I enjoyed the characters. I especially loved the people that joined Lyra's team in order to go rescue these kids up north. I love the world. There were some times where I had to Google some words just because I didn't understand what they were, and I was comparing them to our world today and stuff, so that was kind of fun. I actually enjoyed that. It felt like a little scavenger hunt in a way. The world, I believe, was well developed. It was very imaginary and also easily comparable to our world, considering we figured out what timeline it was, and because of all the hints that the author was dropping about locations and stuff, it was actually following a map to see where they were going. Again, it was like a scavenger hunt, and I enjoyed that aspect very much. As for the main character, Lyra, we saw many things from her point of views, which was okay if you want to look through a point of view of a kid and stuff. But there are times where I was more interested in wondering what's going on with the other characters. But either way, the characters that we saw from their point of views also tied into the most grand scheme of things for this plot, which was really well crafted, I would have to say. It was a good book. It was a good read. It was a good first book to an introduction of a series, and that's as far as I can get into non-spoilers. The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman, first book in his Dark Materials series. 3 out of 5 stars. Bye, non-spoilers! Spoilers. Okay, I will admit, I saw the movie when I was younger without reading the book first, so when I went into this book, I had to be clean slate. No comparisons whatsoever. Yeah, that worked 90% on the way. Either way. So the book opens up with Lyra going into the retiring room, which is a room that only scholars and men are allowed into. So of course a child is going to go into a place where they say you're not allowed to go into. And that's where basically the introductory to the plot happens, where she sees the master of the university that she lives at slip something into a drink that her uncle likes, because her uncle is back in town after 12 months up in the north. So yeah, we're straight off to murdering someone. Now, from what I gather, the demons are basically your soul, so they represent you. So when I met Pan, I thought he would be like Lyra, outgoing, wild, adventurous, doesn't think anything is too dangerous for her to do. He wasn't like that for the first part of the book. He was cautious, afraid, self-aware and stuff, and he was willing to let murder slide. Really, Pan? You were willing to turn the other way when obviously it was poison that the master was putting into Lord Asriel's drink? I mean, wow. I was like speechless myself. I was like, seriously, you just saw someone getting ready to attempt murder and you're like, let's go to the other room and pretend that we didn't see because it has nothing to do with us. I'm with Lyra. We saw this, we should do something, and she does. And I have to question the relationship that she has with her uncle, Lord Asriel, because she literally just saved him after he got off of the ship and landed back at Jordan University. And the first thing he does is like basically twist her arm and threatens her. I'm like, okay, I can go with Pan on this. You can die. But she saves him, and she also sees what her uncle has been doing up in the north. Now, this book had a lot of show, don't tells, and some foreshadowing. The show don't tells, they worked nicely sometimes, and some of them it was just more show and not really much tell, which kind of irked me just a bit. One of them was like the slight mention of severed child, and the mention of severed child could have been easily overlooked if you had been paying attention, because they just casually mentioned it and moved on, which I was like, wait, we're not going to describe more about this? And there's also a photo of like another world in the Aurora Borealis, and there's a brief mention of dust. I will admit through this whole book, there's like, it was mentioned, but it didn't fully go into detail close to the end. So I kind of forgot about this. I kind of took a back seat in the whole grand scheme of things until coming back at the end. And this is where I also said where the book used words that I wasn't familiar with, for example, Panzerbjorn or something like that, and I looked it up and it was translated as, you know, armored bear, which would eventually be told later on in the book. So it's like, okay, I didn't mind that. That was like a little fun thing to go look for, because I also did that for many of the animals. Apparently I can't figure out the real wild word is for a ferret. Through this whole conversation, I found it a little strange that her uncle brought back a head frozen in a block of ice with a hole in it. The scholars looked at it, they were curious, and then they just completely forgot about it. They just moved on to the next topic. Can we get back to the fact that there was a dead man's head iced in Lord Asriel's belongings, and we're just like going on seeing if we can sponsor him again for another trip up to the north to figure out the real meaning behind dust and the possible fact that there are other worlds in, I guess, the Aurora Borealis or somewhere out there. Now, it is kind of proven, because we also see a point of view between the master and the librarian, that there is a mathematical theory of proof that there's another worlds out there, you know, parallel worlds, and the church is out to stop them. Oh, I'm sorry, the magisterium. I was kind of confused a little bit on this whole shady organization thing. So I believe the magisterium is a organization that works under the church, and there's other organizations that are affiliated with it. That was kind of confusing, but I also liked how they had like a deep, I guess, roots into how this whole religious government kind of worked, how it started out with the papacy and kind of grew. I found that very interesting. I have a feeling that's going to play like a major part maybe in the next upcoming books. Now, Lord Asriel leaves Lyra because he got the funding to go back up to the north after he just got back like for less than a day, and he leaves his niece there again. I have to question what these universities / towns are teaching their kids, because I mean, Lyra's reminiscing and also explaining how she's been to war with her friend Roger and the other kids from the universities that work there against other kids from the other universities and towns. I mean, we're talking about kids that found out their own version of the arts of war. I mean, excuse me, she's talking about strategic ambushes, defenses, attacks, spy missions over games called war with other kids, also with Egyptian kids who are like seafaring people. I'm like, what? She even stole a boat from one of the Egyptians after distracting them. Like, oh, what? Are you sure these aren't very highly advanced children? One of the things that I had raged a little bit about was this magic system. So I understand that, you know, demons, they shift their animal forms when their humans are still kids. I mean, they're still young, haven't matured or anything. So the demons, they can shift into any animals. Lyra's demon Pan, he turns into like a ferret, a polecat, birds, moths, that kind of thing, right? Even miniature lions, let's go with that. I think that might be like a cub. But when she is with like some other Egyptian kids and they like get ready to fight or go to war, Pan turns into a dragon. So demons can turn into mythical creatures. If that's the case, then I can easily turn my jaguar into this. Now, one thing that happened in this book, I guess that happened only one time, like in a big grand scale of things, was when it kind of felt like that the scene, like what was going on, kind of panned out and jumped from camera to camera, like doing a 360 of showing us what was going on in certain locations, how it all tied into one big event. That kind of like messed with my head, I will admit, kind of gave me a little headache. And all of this explained, like showing people that probably didn't have anything to go with the story, showing people that had no part of the story but helped move it along, went all the way to one kid named Tony who met this beautiful woman with a golden monkey and who asked him to come with her so they can help other people, thus also helping establish our bad guys who were known as the Gobblers, people that have been kidnapping children, mostly Egyptians and town kids. And again, we get another example as to what these kids are learning, apparently, because Lyra gets the towny kids, the university kids, and the Egyptian kids to go look for one of their friends, Billy Costa, one of the Egyptians, as if they're doing park war as a pigeon carrier thing or something. They're like going all over the place, listening, seeing if there's anything strange, out of the ordinary, while being inconspicuous. Where did these kids learn these things? Now, we know this is a bad person because we saw this person's demon, which is the golden monkey, but the golden monkey shows up at Jordan University with his human, who is known as Mrs. Cutler. And she takes an interest in Lyra and requests that she become her assistant because she plans to do a journey up north where Lord Asriel is as well, because history. And apparently there's been some foreshadowing with the master on something that's going to happen with Lyra, and now he has no choice but to let her go with Mrs. Cutler. But the thing is, he gives her something called an alethiometer, a device that apparently allows someone to see the truth. Only problem is no one knows how to read it because the symbols they're in the books, but like, you know, the books are like in secret places, and there's like only maybe very few of these things that exist. I had a feeling that this thing was very, very important, and the master gives it to a child with little to no instructions on how to work it or what to do with it. I'm like, are you sure that's a wise idea? One thing that I harped so much about on Lyra was the fact that it felt like she instantly forgot about Roger, because before she left the university, Roger went missing. So she was like, oh, the Gobblers got him. Mrs. Cutler comes in to see, oh, Lyra, would you like to go with me to the north? Oh, yes. And she goes to London with her to prepare for the north while shopping, going to parties, learning things, you know, about the stars, reading maps, checking everything. And she basically forgot about Roger. I'm like, so much for loyalty. Red flags instantly fly for Lyra. Well, we already know what's going on because we already had those panning scenes. But Mrs. Cutler is not really steady. I mean, she was fine one moment, and then Lyra shows up with a handbag or a side bag that has the alethiometer just to keep it close by. And Mrs. Cutler's like, oh, please get rid of that. The people are about to show up and I don't want to see that. And she's like, no, but I like it very much. And Mrs. Cutler's like, do it. I told you to. And Lyra's like, no. And then her monkey, her evil monkey, attacks Pan. And Lyra feels that, and she's in pain, and she's begging for Mrs. Cutler to stop. And she does after Lyra says, okay, I'll do what you say. And then she pretends like nothing happened. Yeah, now's the time to run. So I felt a little insulted in a way, because these adults, these evil, menacing, mustache-twirling villains that are behind the Gobblers, also known as the General Oblation Board, they automatically assume Lyra is one of them when there's the cocktail party, because they're talking about all this stuff about Lord Asriel being kidnapped and held by the armored bears, what's going on with the magisterium, and literally saying that Mrs. Cutler is in charge of all this with Lyra around. She gathers that information, uses it to her advantage, makes people believe, yeah, she's actually with us. She's with us. She wants to help with the cause and get these other children and kidnap them and send them to the north for experimentation. They automatically assume that. And that's not the first time in this whole book. I'm like, oh my God. What level of intelligence do they think these kids have? Because they're a whole lot smarter than you think. They're just playing you like fools. Either way, Lyra tricks everyone. She gets the information she needs. Her and Pan, suspecting that the monkey already knows about the alethiometer, take off during the party. I'm like, sweet, we're on the run without a plan. We're screwed. And we almost are, because Lyra almost does get captured that night. But the Egyptians show up because they're making pit stops before going to go meet all the other Egyptians to begin a plan to go save the children. So it's like, yay! Coincidences, who loves them? So we meet the king of the Egyptians, I would have to say, John Fay, and his subordinate, Father Coram. And they know more about Lyra than Lyra knows about herself. First of all, they have spies at the university that kept an eye on Lyra because she's kind of considered one of them since, we reveal the origins of Lyra's birth. Lord Asriel, her uncle, is her father, and Mrs. Cutler is her mother. I seriously question their parenting tactics. And it also sounded like it was a summer fling, that they didn't really love each other, but Lyra came into the picture. Mrs. Cutler wanted nothing to do with her. Lord Asriel left her to be raised by an Egyptian lady for a while until, the husband of Mrs. Cutler found out. So Lord Asriel killed him to prevent him from hurting Lyra. Drama. And we find out that the boy that was kidnapped, Billy Costa, his mother was the one that raised Lyra. So everything comes back around. And while the Egyptians do agree to supply with money, weaponry, transportation, and men to go up to the north, not to only rescue Egyptian children, but the other children as well that have been taken up there. It also reveals that the Egyptians have a lot to owe to Lord Asriel, because he's basically helped them in many situations when the world or the governments really didn't see them as regular people. They saw them as lesser. He fought in their corner for so long. So I saw this as more of a reason for them to also go help them. But John Frey also told his people straight up, we're going to go save the kids. If we can get to Lord Asriel, then we can, but our main goal is the kids. So this book was basically cut up into 3 parts. That was the first part. The second part was trying to get to Bolvangar, which the kids were being held. That was more of travel before getting to the actual location, and even then that was like maybe 3 chapters and that was it, which was a little disappointing for me. We also get more hints to this prophecy, because when the Egyptians basically stop at a town to start unloading things and prepare for the trip on land to go north, Father Coram takes Lyra to go meet this guy who takes care of the council location for witches, because there are witches in this world. They do have demons, but they can be separated for a further long distance than a human and their demons. And Father Coram wants to see if he can get in contact with a witch that he knew in the past, see if they can get her and her people to assist them. Well, the guy that's there at the council or whatever, he also hints more to this prophecy, saying it's a witch's prophecy, while Lyra's doing something else, and he tells this to Father Coram. And he's like saying this child could possibly have a bigger role to play, but not in this world, but in another world, as the witches were saying. And Father Coram's like, I don't understand it. It's like, this has to deal with witches. They know more about this stuff. And that's pretty much it. While the Egyptians are loading up, gathering their materials and stuff, we meet 2 new characters that join their party. One is an armored bear named Uric Bernison, who was tricked by the people after, he was exiled from his own people, and they stole his armor, the humans. He went on a little rampage, hurt some people, and now he's trying to work off, his bills. But Lyra, gaining, his debt and everything by helping him find his armor, thanks to alethiometer, we have one armored bear in our corner. And we also meet agentsmen by the name of Lee Scoresby, an aeronaut and fellow friend of Uric Bernison. Now, going back to the movie, I thought Sam Elliott was just playing Sam Elliott with the character name, dressing up all cowboyish. I didn't know that Lee Scoresby was actually from Texas. The country of Texas. Oh my God. Texas strikes again. I just had to throw that out there and I was like, oh, wow. Okay. During their whole travel plan, they actually stop somewhere and Lyra consults with the alethiometer, and after a previous event where they didn't fully understand the warning that was giving where they were attacked by these machine bugs kind of way, Lyra tells John Fay and Father Coram that the last time that happened, something bad happened. So the alethiometer is telling her she has to go somewhere. So Yurik, under the orders of John Fay, takes Lyra to this location. So when Lyra goes to this little village and they point her in the direction of this strange creature that's been hiding by the fish shack, she finds out it's a kid that managed to run away from Bolvangar, but he doesn't have his demon. That's where we find out that the bad guys, the reason why they've been kidnapping all these kids is to sever their connections with their demons. Oy. I already had this feeling, so I followed with it by not getting attached to Tony, thinking he would survive and everything, because he doesn't. So I have this fear that kids who were severed by their demons wouldn't make it that long without them. And to also add bad news to this whole situation, we found out that witches were flying north, and Yurik said, that's either good or that's either bad. Lyra is like, why? And he says either they're going to be on your side or on the bad people's side. I would think that concerning witches who have demons, because we met a goose demon that belonged to a witch queen. I would figure that if people at Bolvangar are severing connections to demons, they would all be up against this. I guess not. Like I said, this big portion of the book, which is to get to Bolvangar, and we finally get there with like 3 chapters remaining in this second part, which again was disappointing. The Egyptians are attacked, Lyra gets kidnapped and separated, and these people take Lyra to Bolvangar. Again, I felt insulted because the evil mustache twirling people there tell Lyra what she thought happened didn't happen by saying, because she lied by telling them a fake name in a fake situation that happened. And they said, oh, you probably just got separated from your father. I know it's very difficult up here in the north. Children can get confused. You know, you're hungry, you're tired, you fall asleep in the snow, and your mind is muddled and everything. But don't worry, you're here, you're safe. We'll make sure your father finds you. Treating a child like you think it's a regular child. Dracarys. But again, Lyra proves her intellect over these adults, because not only does she find Billy, Moncasa's son, and Roger, they get back into a little group, as well as gaining information from the other kids who know what's going on, and they start forming a plan to escape. Lyra's only been there for like 24 hours and she's already about to pull off the great escape. Either way, during this whole planning, she also takes this opportunity during a fire drill, starts a little snowball fight, and while Billy and Roger are keeping an eye out, because apparently the adults really don't know how to run a facility full of children, Lyra goes to investigate a room, and at the same time the goose demon of the witch shows up with his assistants, and we find the demons of the severed children. I thought that, you know, going off of the movie, that demons disappeared when they were severed from their humans. Apparently that's not true, because they were alive, kind of ghostly-like, unsure of what to do, missing that connection with their humans. So that was a little sad. And the goose, of course, was infuriated, and the Lyra was like totally in like, you know, terror about what was really going on in here. So the goose takes these severed demons to try to help find them their humans, but knowing that the connection that they had would never be there again, and possibly to go warn the witches about what's going on. And with time ticking down to this ultimate escape, and knowing that the Egyptians and Yurik aren't far away, Lyra, at the same time knowing that Mrs. Cutler is there because she showed up like right after the goose took the demons, she figures she's gonna go gather more information, see what they're dealing with. And she does the Mission Impossible, going through the air fence, which was a good idea until the very end when she gets caught. And then we are introduced to this machine, that the intercision machine, which cuts the bond between the kids and the demons. We like see a brief moment of that where they put Lyra and Pan in there after like a big fight. Clearly Lyra was like fighting for her life with Pan going through different forms and everything. But then Mrs. Cutler saves her, as well as the monkey. Like the monkey literally drags Pan out of the cage. Again, this magic system, I was pretty sure that Pan turned into a dragon, and it was also mentioned in the book that Pan turned into multiple animals like a bear, a wolf and stuff. Are these small animals for children? I mean, if he turned into a bear and stayed in that form, he could have won. I mean, we were talking about regular doctor demons that are like dogs, a baboon, an owl. If you turned into a full-grown brown bear, you could have handled that on your own. But yeah, this magic system. Now we're about 10 to 15 pages away from ending the second part of the book, and it's like very anticlimactic for the villains. Mrs. Cutler is with Lyra and she explains what they're doing. They believe that dust is very bad, and before children's demons settle, they cut that bond between them, saving the children from the evil corruption of dust. And she says, you can still have your demons. It'll be like a pet, your best friend that's a pet. And she's like, this procedure isn't dangerous. Even the adults have done this. Which explains why all the demons that belong to the adults are like in a daze. And if kids are dying when you do this, I'm pretty sure there's a difference between success rates for adults and success rates for children. I'm just like saying, look at the numbers. Either way, Mrs. Cutler goes through this whole monologue of saying what they were doing here. And then she automatically turns to Lyra and basically saying, I know that the Master of Jordan gave you something important. It's in the lithiometer. May I have it? And she goes through Lyra's stuff and just takes a canteen that supposedly has the alethiometer in it. Well, early on, Lyra had Yurik make this canteen that not only had the alethiometer, but also one that had that little mechanical spy bug that's very temperamental and we don't want to let out. Well, switcheroo, people. So, anticlimactic of how we got rid of Mrs. Cutler. She opened that canteen with her monkey and the bug went into like a mean, evil frenzy, I shall kill you mode. Lyra escapes with the kids after setting the whole place on fire. Thank you very much. They outbest the guards that are guarding Bolvangar by throwing snow at their face. Also, when Yurik shows up to start attacking people, and they run into the snow. And there are the Egyptians far off in the distance. But we also get attacked again by some of the guards with Mrs. Cutler. But the witches show up, the ones that Father Coram was trying to get in contact with. And we escape with Lyra and Roger, with Yurik, and Lee Scoresby's balloon with the witches as assistants. And that was pretty much the end of the Egyptians. They just like went off into the distance with the kids from Bolvangar after setting the rest of the place on fire. Yay! Now part 3, the last part of this book, was like just going to Svalbard, which where the ice bears live. Meaning we were going to Yurik's home because first of all, Lord Asriel's there. So, you know, we're back to plan a side mission to go rescue him. This book introduces the most interesting characters and then just writes them off because we have a moment with Lee Scoresby and Serafina Pekkala, the one who has the goose demon. Like we were literally introduced to her and we get maybe like 10 to 20 pages with her and that's it. I was really interested about this witch queen because she had a moment talking to Lee while Lyra and Roger were sleeping, talking about the prophecy and how this child Lyra, who can read the symbol reader, how she has an important part to play and she can only do this without a full knowledge of what she's doing. I'm like, we're again here with the prophecy with a witch who knows a lot of things because she's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then we get attacked by these evil cliff creatures. Again, there's a lot of weird things happening in the north. And that's the end that we see of Lee's Scoresby. I mean, Lyra falls out of the basket, but she's fine. And Yurik and Roger will be fine. But that was the end that we see of Lee and Serafina Pekkala. I was mad. And remember how I said that I felt insulted about the evil mustache twirling villainous adults? Do ice bears count as well? Because Lyra's taken to, where all the ice bears are, to a palace, because the Bear King's trying to act more human, meaning he wants a demon of his own. And because he thinks more human, the King Ivar is tricked by Lyra. She tells him that she is Yurik's demon, that Mrs. Cutler, who's supposedly an ally of his, gave her to him after an experiment to Yurik, and it was a success, and that she is his demon, meaning she is the first human demon to an armored bear. And Ivar completely falls for it. Especially when Lyra tells him of a possible way to transfer her over to him, thus allowing Yurik to enter the premises without getting attacked. Smart play on your part, Lyra, but really, Ivar, you're supposed to be a king. You're supposed to have been the one to have tricked Yurik into killing another bear to become king, because you had a claim as well. And you get tricked by an 11-year-old. Wow. Really, moving on. Bear combat. Yurik wins. He is the king of the bears now. They dish away anything human-like related for them trying to become human. They also let the humans out, the really smart ones that the bears didn't want to let loose, like, kill because they have too much information. And they go look for Lord Asriel. Now we see Lord Asriel. Lyra's happy, but he's not too happy to seeing her. And I felt like this whole alethiometer thing felt like a plot device. I mean, I can understand the absolute power that can wield by telling the truth to whoever could read it, and Lyra figured out how to read it. But it wasn't mentioned a lot in the book. And when Lord Asriel didn't show any interest in it, I'm like, okay, so this device, this all-powerful device that many were destroyed and there's barely any left, that the Master of Jordan consulted with and saw the truth maybe, and gave it to Lyra for a specific purpose. And it wasn't this purpose to give it to Lord Asriel. I was like, okay, this felt like a major plot device just to get from Lyra to leave Jordan, to go all the way to the north just to see Lord Asriel. And Lord Asriel finally clarifies on dust, considering the fact that I almost forgot all about it until we got to Bull Vanguard, because a bunch of kids were making rumors about dust. So the Magisterium considers dust as the original sin. I mean, he even has Lyra pull out a book to read about Adam and Eve. And it's basically how when Adam and Eve, when their demons continue to shift and everything, they were pure, they were innocent, they had nothing to worry about, I guess. And then when Eve ate the apple and gave it to Adam, their demons finally settled and they awoke and they were no longer pure and innocent. Well, that's how they see it with kids and adults. When adults' demons, when they settled, that means, they are finally tainted with original sin. While children whose demons continue to shift, they are still pure and innocent and haven't been tainted yet. Well, they figure, let's make this permanent. So they cut the bond between the demons and the children to make sure they never have the sin, I guess. And so that's all that's been happening in Bull Vanguard. That's the reason why these kids have been being kidnapped. I think they might want to go back to the drawing board, considering a bunch of kids aren't surviving this. I'm just saying, if one was paying attention, we remember the conversation that the master had with the librarian back at Jordan University about how Lyra would, the librarian thought like Lyra would be betrayed, but the master said no, Lyra would be the betrayer without her knowing. Well, that's what happened at the end, and that's because we find out that Lord Asriel kidnapped Roger, and that was the thing that he needed to try to open up the other world in the Aurora Borealis, to go to that world. That was a child with a demon, because apparently he said that once he severed the connection, a great powerful blast of energy would happen, and that would be enough apparently to open up the other world. And that's when Lyra realized she betrayed Roger. She went all this way to save him, brought him to Lord Asriel, and accidentally betrayed him by giving Lord Asriel what he needed. Well, while Yurik gets Lyra to the location she needs to be while fighting off people who are the remains of Ball Vanguard with witches on their side, things don't turn out so well. The ending happens with Lord Asriel severing the connection that Roger has with his demon after Lyra tries to save him, and the blast is enough to actually open up the new world. Well, the parallel world for Lord Asriel gets you. And the wording description that was going on kind of led me confused to where Miss Cutler just showed up there with her monkey. I'm like, whoa, where'd you come from? And her and Lord Asriel have a conversation, and they go their separate ways, forever acknowledging that they shall be enemies to one another. And Lyra, with Roger in her arms, no longer living, and Pan coming up with this way saying that if adults say that dust is bad, that must mean it's good. Because what adults say that isn't right and bad actually means it is right and not bad. So at the end, Lyra, with Pan, follows Lord Asriel to find dust and to prove that it is good. And they go into another world that will have its own rules and players and own system, either magical or not. So that's gonna be interesting. And yeah, that's the end of spoilers. This was a good read. I will admit that this was a good read. Again, there are times where it had me raging, especially over the magic system, because I felt that I could have gone more in depth, because we did figure out that demons were the souls of the humans after certain conversations, but it wasn't specifically said until further on. I wanted to know more because apparently there were more creatures out there, but they weren't really mentioned. So there's more than just humans and armored bears and witches and I guess spirits in a way. There's other creatures out there. It was just mentioned. It wasn't described or anything. It only came into play one time. The wordings that they use for describing the proper description of an animal and how they would use like say traditional words in other cultures, like Pansbjorn was like a Danish word for armored bear. I had fun doing that. I felt that again that was like a scavenger hunt of not only figuring out like the lettering for this world, but also figuring out the locations that they were going to. Like I looked up certain things online and found out where they were in the maps. Like, okay, I got my map ready, I got my dictionary ready. This was a good scavenger hunt. I enjoyed the world. I enjoyed the world building and everything. It did feel like our world, just like little tweaks and stuff, not too much. The cast were spectacular to be around. I hope I could see them more in future books. I wonder if the Elite Theometer is going to have like a bigger play in like the next book or so, because again it felt like a plot device to get Lyra from point A to point B. And I wonder how Lyra is going to fare in a new world, considering that she and Pan are going to be the only companions and slash allies that they'll have. And you know, Lord Asriel is out there, and I'm pretty sure he's not afraid to cause her harm, because you know, he only saw her like a means to an end when she brought Roger to him, and he has no actual love and affection towards her. And yeah, this was a good read. It was a good introductory to a book series. I can't wait to read the next book. I can understand why people weren't too pleased about the movie, but I can't wait for the TV show His Dark Materials to come out. And yeah, The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman, first book in His Dark Materials series. 3 out of 5 stars. My name is Sarah, and bye!